You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
Hello and welcome to another 3-Mod Pod. I am John Kurtz, joined by Cole Manbeck, former beat writer for the Manhattan Mercury, Derek Young of K-State Online. We're here to talk K-State, Mizzou, people. K-State and Mizzou renewing what has been a long rivalry going back to the Big 8 days and beyond. They'll link up for the first time since 2011 this Saturday at Bill Snyder Family Stadium, with each team coming off of convincing wins over South Dakota and Louisiana Tech. We're going to break it all down. Derek sat down with Adrian Martinez, so you'll get to hear from the quarterback himself about what was an underwhelming day in terms of his stat line, 11 of 15 for 53 yards passing. How worried is he going into this matchup against Mizzou and beyond? You'll find that out. Plus, we'll break everything down, give you locks of the week and everything that you've come to expect from our grand total of one game preview pod that we have done on 3-Mod so far. Hey, shout out to Holiday Distillery. If you guys are going out to the game, I know it's early. This is Bloody Mary time. It's like prime Bloody Mary time to get your 360 vodka on from Holiday Distillery. Or, hey, if you're a bourbon man and you can handle it at 9 o'clock in the morning, then that's all you too. Ben Holiday Bottled and Bond Bourbon is the offering there from Holiday Distillery. K-State ties, great people that support our podcast. So support those who support us and get out to Holiday Distillery and rock your Charlie hustle. Rock your Charlie hustle as you are out at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Once again, you have lots of opportunities to do that here early in the year. Okay, we're going to start with headlines here. And before we dive into some more of Missouri and the specifics of the game and the matchup and all of that, we'll start with what we found out at the press conference from Chris Klieman on Tuesday. And unfortunately, that was some injury news, one piece of it being pretty bad. That is that Taylor Poitier is going to be out for the season. K-State's offensive guard, who everybody raves about the potential that he has. He is a really fun kid. He was awesome at the Casey Catbacker event earlier this year. Seemed thrilled to be getting back after he was set to start last year and then had a season-ending injury. It has now happened again with a knee injury. He'll be out for the year, and that is a tough blow, DY. I think almost more so, and we can talk about what it means personnel-wise for the team, but almost more so just, your heart breaks for the kid, and he has so much potential himself. It's like, that's what I can't get over. I feel so bad for him, and who knows what his plan is going to be for the future now at this point. But that was really rough news, because I think the way it started looking on Saturday, I was actually anticipating that it would not be a season-ending injury.
Yeah, me too. And kind of what I was hearing a little bit afterwards, it didn't sound anyone was pressing the alarm buttons, but you just never know in these cases. And I agree with you. Almost from like a personal sentiment standpoint is where I'm crushed the most, more so than from a personnel standpoint. Don't get me wrong, they're going to miss him on the football field, but they've also built a solid enough roster in the offensive line room that they can probably shoulder a blow like this much better than they would in several years past, right? So they're going to be able to respond. You can't fully replace Taylor Poitier, but with their offensive line room, they can get close. They're just going to be able to slot in Hadley Panzer and probably still feel pretty good about what they're going to be able to have on the offensive line. But from a personal standpoint, it's crushing, because he's someone that they consider all conference caliber, both as a player and a person. Like you said, he's a great person. We got to meet him at the Casey Catbacker event. I've interviewed him several times. One of the more charismatic players on the team, and just one of the best teammates that everyone talks about too. And like Chris Klieman said, sometimes the cruelest things happen to the best kids.
Yeah, all conference potential. DY, this was his 4th year in the program, and yet the kid has only been able to play essentially 4 games in a 4-year span of his career due to injuries. And you think about what he's had to go through. He was in Chris Kleiman's first recruiting class. He has to go through the COVID season of 2020, then is penciled in to be a starter last year and injures his knee, tears his ACL just before the season, has to miss the entire year, and then essentially gets less than 1 quarter of football in, and a fluke deal where he gets leg whipped and tears his knee up again and is out for the year. So you think about the last 3 years of what he's had to go through. You really worry about just what that could do to a young man mentally. I mean, I would just feel terrible for him. That's where my first reaction went as well. I think ultimately K-State personnel-wise will be okay. up front. I really like Hadley Panzer. I do think where it becomes a little bit concerning is you're one injury away from getting a little bit problematic on the offensive line, because if something happens to Hayden Gillum, then you have to move Hadley Panzer back to center, and you can't afford then to move Cooper Beebe out from guard to tackle eventually down the road. To me, what becomes one of your most important players up front is Andrew Langang, because of his versatility now moving forward. We know they have high hopes for him. He's a redshirt freshman. He saw 28 snaps on Saturday. His versatility, they liken him similar to what Cody Whitehair was and his potential. And so his ability to play tackle and guard is going to be crucial for this team, because they're going to have to probably rely on him to play all over the field. Hopefully no more injuries occur, but that would be where my concern is, because Carver Willis really struggled when he was in the game on Saturday, when he came in as a backup right tackle. And so I don't feel great about the tackle depth after they get through these guys and then Langang.
I would agree. And going back to Tail Portier, another thing to think about, just like how much hard work goes into rehabbing and recovering and returning from the type of injury that he had, only to have basically a quarter and a half in it to happen again. That's just crushing. And then to your point, I agree. Andrew Langang becomes very, very important. And I have a lot of confidence in what he can do. So I feel good about that. The only, I guess, not really arguing you, I'm kind of agreeing with you, but just about any team in the country not named Alabama, Georgia, or Ohio State, they have 2 or 3 injuries on the offensive line, they're going to be in trouble. So Kansas State's probably not different in that regard.
Yeah, the question that I've been asked now, and I don't know the answer to this. DY, do we know, is it the same knee?
I don't know.
Because to me, that becomes a pretty important question when we're talking about, like, what does this mean for Portier's future? Mm-hmm. If it's the same knee, I don't know. That may be more problematic. I guess I don't know what the better answer is, or if you've had surgery on both knees. I had someone talking to me about, like, Bill Walker's situation, like Cole, for example, might be able to speak to that. I mean, he had a couple of knee issues on both knees, right? And kind of changed who he was as a player. Either way, I wish the best for Portier. Certainly hope that he'll be able to come back and have a fulfilling career. But, when you've had this happen back-to-back years, I wouldn't blame him if he went the other way as well. So on the injury front with others, it sounds like Josh Hayes and TJ Smith will likely be back. They were back on the depth chart this week, but then still no Sean Robinson and no Will Honus, obviously affecting the linebacking core there. Any further updates or any context you want to add to those guys, DY?
I feel like Josh Hayes is going to return, but I will say Chris Kleiman said on Tuesday, too early to tell on him. But I feel, from everything that I had gathered, I would be a little surprised if he weren't able to play. And then with Sean Robinson, not on the depth chart, but Chris Kleiman also grouped him with Hayes as too early to tell. So he didn't completely rule him out. That one definitely seems a lot more touch and go, more so than Josh Hayes, in my opinion. TJ Smith, I thought was going to be out longer. And then I started to hear maybe not as long as projected. And then he was on the depth chart, and Chris Kleiman said that he was running around a little bit at practice and was supposed to be in pads and, hitting a little bit on Tuesday. So out of that group, it almost sounds like TJ Smith has the best chance, but I still feel good about Josh Hayes coming back.
Well, I feel pretty good too, just about where the safeties and linebackers were in general in week 1. So I'm not stressed a ton about that here at the moment, but something certainly to monitor. Look, another headline, and it's been talked about a lot by everybody coming out of that first game, and we certainly talked about it on the recap pod of South Dakota. But going into this week against Mizzou, I think everybody realizes it will take, in all likelihood, more than 53 yards passing to beat the Tigers. And in general, the storyline for the season, like, what are you going to get from Adrian Martinez? How much concern should be there about Adrian Martinez? And we were talking about this in kind of a joking manner before the show, but it is true. I think most people from the outside looking in, I heard it on, for instance, The Solid Verbal, a great college football podcast that I listened to, where their one note on the K-State game was that, like, man, did you see Adrian Martinez's line? One, it stands out because everybody's known him as such a high-risk, high-reward player in his time at Nebraska. So an 11 for 15, where he calls himself a game manager afterwards for 53 yards, just doesn't fit the narrative at all. And if you're somebody that hasn't believed in him and you've seen him struggle to win games at Nebraska and now puts up that as his first line at K-State, I think the outside world certainly has a ton of skepticism about him. After now, Derek, you've heard from Kleiman, from Adrian Martinez himself, who we'll hear from later on in the podcast. concern level with 9 a.m. and where that's at heading into week 2.
I'm indifferent on it. From the outside world, I understand their skepticism and when they see that line. What I will say is I would like to know how many of those guys actually saw one snap at the Kansas State versus South Dakota game to accurately portray what was happening, because I doubt they saw one snap. And if they did, they probably turned the channel pretty soon afterwards. So unless you saw like a straightforward a quarter, I don't know that you're a good barometer for how that game transpired, because I think game flow does dictate a lot what a quarterback does or might do. And you also have to see at least one quarter, see what the game plan is and how a team's defending a certain quarterback as well. I think that all plays into it. They were pretty adamant that he was basically playing game manager, playing distributor, and not taking chances and taking what the defense gave them. And South Dakota was basically taking away anything over the top of 10 yards, which is fair. But I think that happens in a lot of games, and guys still throw for more than 53 yards. So I think the uneasiness, but still, I guess, blind confidence that it's going to work itself out and look a lot better in the future weeks is fair.
This is where I'd like to have the all 22 view, where I could go back and rewatch the game against South Dakota and see how many routes.
You were at the game.
Well, my seats, I don't have that all 22 view from the aerial perspective, where I would really like, I'm not able to watch every receiver. I would really like to go back and see all the routes that were actually being ran, because I just don't recall much being downfield. I mean, one time I recall Phillip Brooks running a deep route outside of the one they threw deep to him. He was running deep, but they had Adrian Martinez rolling out to his left, and so he wasn't going to be able to make that throw across his body 50 yards downfield. So I just didn't see many routes being ran downfield, and they kept it very basic, very vanilla. But I get it. Like, Adrian Martinez had the lowest quarterback rating in the Big 12 in the opening week, and really it wasn't close. I think
by far.
He was what, ranked quarterback rating of 17, and the next closest was 50 something in the Big 12. KU's Jalen Daniels led the Big 12. So, look, there's going to be criticism about it, but as we talked about on our recap pod of the South Dakota game that we released earlier this week, I think Adrian Martinez is going to be fine, and I think they'll figure things out. This is a guy that's not been afraid to throw it downfield throughout his career. He averaged 9.4 yards per pass at Nebraska last year, which tied C.J. Stroud at Ohio State for the 7th best mark in the country, and would have been the 3rd best mark in K-State football dating back to 1993 from a quarterback in a single season. So it's a guy that throws the ball downfield historically, and I think he will. I just think he was risk averse. They were conscious of not wanting that narrative to be about turnovers in game 1, and so they were very careful, and they didn't have to throw downfield. So I think everybody will feel much better with what they see on the field Saturday against Missouri, and they'll relax if they come out and see K-State throw for nearly 200 yards or 200 plus in this game. And I think K-State is going to have to throw for close to that number, because I think Missouri is really going to try to take away Deuce Vaughn in the running attack.
Yeah, I was going to say, make no mistake about it, he will have to do much more than what he showed against South Dakota. Because if you're Missouri, is there any other way you would defend it besides making Adrian beat you?
No, man. I'm leaving those wideouts one-on-one. Malik Knowles, you better beat some guys. Phillip Brooks, you better get open. Cade Warner, RJ Garcia, whoever it's going to be, I would not be. Look, nothing against those guys. I would not be very scared of that if I were Missouri and had their SEC athletes on defense. Because one thing, Missouri's defense I know struggled a lot last year. They struggled in particular against the run. But they do look pretty fast and athletic on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, that was one takeaway from the La Tech game.
People need to remember that Adrian threw for nearly 3,000 yards last season and has thrown for over 10,000 yards in his career. So that 53-yard passing game was really just an outlier in my eyes. And first game, missed most of the spring. First game for Colin Klein. I think this will be a completely different game on Saturday.
All right. I'm with you. I'm with that plan. And we're with it because you want to beat Mizzou. There's a little bit of extra juice here than your typical week 2 matchup, it feels like, for K-State. And it's not just, at least for me, because Mizzou left for the SEC and reigniting an old rivalry and all that. It's really because Eli Drinkwitz, the head coach of the Tigers, has thrown a little bit of gas on the fire for this rivalry with not only taking Josh Manning, that K-State really wanted and thought they had committed, but then the follow-up tweet where he was mocking Avery Johnson, in essence, that I think, for me personally, I shouldn't speak for everybody. For me personally, that's what's really added an extra layer to this rivalry. And even dating back, I mean, look, Drinkwitz, I remember him running his mouth at SEC Media Days, not this past year, but the year before, where I went down and wrote this down. He took shots at the SEC Associate Commissioner, Dan Mullen, Shane Beamer, and Arkansas fans, all in his time at the podium in 2021 at SEC Media Days. Like, a dude that runs his mouth who's 12-12, that's going to rub some people the wrong way. So that to me, honestly, is why I feel as much about it. I didn't really hate Mizzou for leaving for the SEC. I think anybody in their position would have done the same thing. So I never was in that camp where I'm like, oh, screw these guys. They left us high and dry in the Big 12. Like, I mean, it's what anybody would have done at that point in time. It took Drinkwitz to really spark everything back for me. I don't know about you guys, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, well, I didn't live it, so you guys probably have better perspective. What I will say is, from an outsider perspective, that I can say is the non-conference games that we have covered or about to cover since I have been here, there is, even though we played Stanford last year in Texas and it was coming off COVID, so there was excitement just being able to play in a big stadium and the fans coming back to the stadiums at that point. There is nothing that really compares to the hype that's kind of been building for this game. Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Stanford, I think, are the three that I've been associated with since covering Kansas State. They don't match what you kind of feel about this Missouri game. It doesn't come close.
I never really, John, had that level of hatred for Missouri when they were in the Big 12. I can remember rooting for Missouri against Kansas in some of those seasons, 06, 07, when Kansas was in the top 5 in the country with Todd Reesing. I mean, I was really rooting hard for Missouri. I never had an issue with Gary Pinkel or, when he was there all those years. Now, look, part of that is K-State beat Missouri a lot, right? They won 13 straight against the Tigers at one point. So there wasn't really a lot of reason for me to hate on Mizzou. But I just never really had issues with them. And yet here we are. And leaving for the SEC, it's fine. I really am not that bitter about that, to your point. But to me, it all goes back to Eli Drinkwitz. I just really can't stand the guy. I find him very hard to like. To me, he strikes me as someone that thinks he's much cooler than he actually is. Just the way he portrays himself. He bothers me. And I think he bothers a lot of people, bothers a lot of Kansas State fans. He's a good troll at things. You mentioned things he said. Recall it, I believe, SEC Media Days this year. You mentioned 2021 when he said, I think the Tennessee rules violations came out in Knoxville about some of the things they committed. And he said, well, I should get an extra win on my schedule, because of that, after they got beat 62-24 by Tennessee last year. Look, I know he was half joking, but then he made a comment about his wife. Something that I can't recall the whole situation in Tennessee, but head coach's wife was involved in recruiting, and he made a comment about his wife. He just bothers me. So I'm more fired up for this game than any Missouri game I can recall in my lifetime. And it has nothing to do with it being the first time that K-State's played Mizzou in 11 years. It's all because of Eli Drinkwitz and really wanting to lay it on him.
I agree. I mean, it's like there was the 13, K-State won 13 straight, Snyder 1.0. It was like 93 to 05, right? 05. It ended with that game, Bill Snyder's last game, when Brandon Archer had the pick 6 to seal it over Brad Smith and company, a game K-State really probably had no business winning. But you win 13 straight. So it's like, this is what we do. It happens every year. There was a 66-0 in 1999. And then Ron Prince comes in, and then Mizzou dominated the series. They won 5 straight to close out Ron Prince, and then the beginning of Snyder 2.0 when he was still getting it up and running. Then you had the last game before they left for the SEC, and then that was it, which K-State won in 2011. So, it was never really like a heated rivalry. It was always very one-sided, dominated on one side. But Drinkwitz, I understand the appeal if you're a Mizzou fan. Look, the guy can recruit. I mean, I wouldn't take that away from him, but you need to turn it into some wins to back up some of that talk, or I think it's just going to fall on deaf ears with everybody. I mean, I don't know the pulse of the Mizzou fan base on how exactly they feel about him and the way he goes about it, but he's a guy that's trying to make himself a polarizing figure, and just trying to draw a lot of attention to himself. Can be good, can be bad, but you better start winning some games if you're going to really back that up and have it mean anything.
I tend to think they still support him quite a bit. I think if I was a Mizzou fan, Obviously, you got to win at some point.
That 6 and 7, where they had one win
obviously
over
you
a
gotta
Power
win
5 team into November last year. They're still in love with him. They love him.
Obviously, you got to win at some point, but I almost think having that little bit of an entertain, because they got really dull when Barry Odom was there, and maybe a little bit before that too. So I think just being a little bit livelier and engaging can be a good thing as well. What I wanted to say is Chris Kleiman has a chance to go 3-0 versus the SEC at Kansas State. He's already beaten Mississippi State and LSU.
But that's what I mean. To me, this feels excitement level pretty similar to at Mississippi State in 2019. I don't think anyone was very fired up about the 2018 game when Mississippi State came in, but I was pretty fired up for that game at Mississippi State when you were going, because the Kleiman era, there was all the excitement about
this one's
him
different.
taking over.
Yeah, this one's more.
Yeah,
this one means more.
I do agree. I think this one much more energy around this. A large part of that is because it's at home, for one, and
right.
Mizzou's coming to Manhattan. But also, I just think we were at the Mississippi State game in Starkville. I mean, I was excited about it, but I didn't actually expect K-State to win that game, so I was pleasantly surprised when that occurred. This game, I do expect K-State to win, but that has something to do with it. But also, I just feel I've been, ever since the game ended on Saturday against South Dakota, I just wanted to fast forward through this week and get to this next Saturday to 11 a.m. I'm really fired up for it. I'm taking my 5-year-old son to it. He's jacked up. He wants Eli Drinkowitz to be fired. He's listened to me too much. He wants K-State to beat him so bad that he gets fired. So, yeah, he's going to bring the energy on Saturday as well.
Yeah, he's speaking the same language as you now.
Yeah, no,
very,
it's
very
scary.
much so.
Scary.
Building the monster. I'll throw this in too. I think a part of this, the crossover in recruiting, the Manning thing, K-State is recruiting against Mizzou a little. DY, you can speak to this, but it feels like a little more.
They just won a recruiting battle.
Yeah, more frequently, because K-State's actually up to their level of recruiting a little bit here. That's happened in the last year, which means you're butting heads against Mizzou a little bit more.
Yeah, locally, they just beat Mizzou for Jordan Allen. They're going to have a ton of Kansas City kids here this weekend. So what better time to defeat the team that a lot of them probably grew up, watching as well, than when they're there front and center, because Kansas, and it's going to be kind of a class of 2024 day a bit. And Kansas in 2024, not great, but KC Mo in 2024 is loaded.
Well, we talked about Adrian Martinez just a moment ago, and where things are headed for 9 a.m. after his 53 yards passing in week 1. Derek, you had a chance to catch up with him at the press conference. Why don't you set this conversation up with what 9 a.m. was feeling?
I called it the conversation of the week again, by the way. That's
conversation of the week. All right. So what is it? The 3-mile conversation of the week?
Yeah. I think that's what I called it last week. That's what I called it this week. I would say, Adrian's really polished, and he's almost tough to interview, just because he is so smarter than you, and he makes you think about everything that you're going to do. And you'll probably, maybe get a hint of that here. But I thought his, honesty when answering the questions about, fans, media, everyone's reaction to the passing yards thing was interesting. I just asked him if he was concerned. So he gave just an honest and transparent answer about how he felt, about the lack of yardage.
All right, well, here it is, DY with Adrian Martinez.
Adrian Martinez here with me, Derek Young, with the 3-mile conversation of the week. You got the first game out of the way at Kansas State, Bill Snyder Family Stadium. What are just some things that you'll probably take with you, maybe for eternity?
Yeah, I would just say it was a special atmosphere, home opener. I think the crowd really did a great job of being engaged and kind of getting us going. And then obviously that first play was a great tone setter for us, not only for the game, but for the season.
You actually took some high fives from the fans, I think, after your touchdown. Is that kind of a thing you do, or did you just kind of get wrapped up in the moment?
Just in the moment type of thing, and something I won't be doing in the future because I will get a flag. So I don't need that, but it was fun.
Missouri's now the next game on the schedule. I guess we could talk about their defense a little bit. You've only seen probably one game of film, and then last year, of course. What is the kind of the main takeaway at this point?
Yeah, I'd say they're a talented unit, really talented team that will be good this year. And, don't really want to get into the schematics too much, but they have a good D-line. I think their safeties move really well, and they'll be aggressive with us from the jump.
Coach Kleiman already kind of shared the news that Taylor Portier is going to be done for the season. Just what's kind of the reaction in the locker room to that news? I know you guys are a very tight bunch.
Yeah, TP's a really, really good dude, and, we've all been rooting for him. He was one of the first people I met and knew here in Manhattan. So I will say I think no matter what he decides to do, he'll be successful in life, and this is just a speed bump for him.
If there's one thing you take away from your performance on Saturday, either good or bad or both, it's up to you, what would you say were your observations maybe when looking over everything that you saw again?
Yeah, I would just say it was a solid team win. I think that's what Kansas State's about, and for me it's just about being consistent and playing turnover-free football.
Did you feel like, and I know some of it's the coach's call here, calling the plays and everything, do you think you guys probably held a little bit back on purpose, knowing what's left on the schedule the rest of the way to 12-game season?
Yeah, I think that type of stuff really isn't up to me, and we're going to do what the coaches think is successful on the football field, and I think we did that, and we succeeded at that. Now, sometimes game plans call for more conservative things, sometimes game plans call for more aggressive things, and I think as the season progresses, we'll see a mixture of both.
Some of the conversation I overheard you were talking about some of the injuries from the past, of course, and that's a lot of that is associated with your last year. How fresh do you feel right now going into game 2? A little bit more than usual?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I didn't get hit too much last game, and injuries in the past, blah blah. It's part of football. I think everyone has injuries, but I definitely feel really good right now, and that's something I hope to maintain throughout the year.
Some of those times you were back there, and they played everything over the top for the most part, so it was covered pretty well. But you had, I think there were some plays 7-8 seconds, of protection. Was there a point where it was like, is there anyone coming? Was it almost a shock to have the ball for that long and not really be rushed?
Yeah, I think most quarterbacks, you try to have a time clock in your head when you should expect to get rid of the ball, but I think it's just a testament to those O-linemen. I mean, Coach Riley's done a great job with them, and I have a lot of faith in those guys to maintain that.
First play was that touchdown with Malik Knowles. When was the kind of the time? Was it before the play or in the middle of the play where you're like, this one's going to be, a difference maker for us? It's going to work, because I'm sure you schemed it out during the week.
Yeah, that first play is usually scripted, and we felt good about it going in. And I'd say probably a split second after I handed off the ball and I saw Malik turn the corner, I was like, oh, this has a chance. And then I saw Deuce lay that block, and I was like, all right, we're out the gate. And he took it to the house. I mean, Malik's got the talent to finish those type of plays.
I'm sure there's not a lot of contact, especially when it comes to Deuce Vaughn in practices. You guys want to keep him upright so you don't maybe see some of those blocks that that he pulled off there. Was that a little bit of a stunner when you kind of look at the film and he's putting a guy on his back, even though he's, what is he, 5'5", 5'6"?
Oh, shoot, I don't know. But I will say that I wasn't surprised by the block. He finishes his stuff in practice. He makes sure to get the right fits and those type of things. I don't think Deuce will ever shy away from contact.
And what about you? Are we ever going to see you lower the shoulder kind of like that?
I think it's just what the situation calls for. Sometimes yes, sometimes not.
I think some of the, obviously reaction since the game, from outside the building, probably not inside the building, is like, oh, we didn't even throw for 100 yards. What is your kind of response to that at this point?
Yeah, I'm really not too concerned about it. At the end of the day, I want to win the game. So if we throw for no yards and we win the game, that's good with me. Okay.
And then this week, are you anticipating an even bigger crowd reaction and everything with Missouri in the house? Another sellout. Just what is the juices flowing looking like at this point?
Yeah, I think everyone's excited about it. It's an old Big 8 rivalry, and I know our fans will be really excited, be really loud. I mean, I think it's already sold out, so it'll be a fun atmosphere.
Yeah, Big 8. I mean, did you ever play Missouri at Nebraska?
No, never.
Okay, and I guess we kind of already talked about the Missouri defense. Is there any players that you guys have kind of pinpointed that, or guys that you want to be mindful of throughout the contest?
I wouldn't say right now specifically, but we know they have a lot of talent. I think there's guys that are high on NFL draft boards, and I know they have some transfers in that are talented. So they'll have some guys. I think it's more about us, and that's what we try and do, focus on what we can do to win the game.
Them having a lot of transfers on that side of the ball, probably only one game at Missouri, does that make the preparation any tougher?
I don't think so. you don't necessarily base a preparation specifically on players. And, you know, you could probably say the same thing for them. I mean, I'm a transfer, and there's other things you can find to figure out what a player's about.
Lastly, the starting right guard will probably be Hadley Panzer with TP, you know, on the shelf, so to speak. What's the confidence level? And because it feels like you guys have a deep offensive line where it's like, you know, next man up.
Yeah, absolutely. It is next man up. And I think Coach Riley's done a really great job with those guys and making sure guys are in the rotation and ready to go whenever. And Hadley will do great, or whoever it may be will do great.
All right, that's quarterback Adrian Martinez. I'm Derek Young. You're listening to the 3-Mile Pod.
All right, we appreciate Adrian Martinez taking the time to sit down with Derek there. Great job. Deuce Vaughn, Adrian Martinez, right out of the chute, your first 2 interviews.
Yeah, it's nothing but downhill from here now.
Yeah, well, you're right. You're right. Or, you know, some more conversations with those 2 guys. You never know.
Yeah.
We'll see. Hey, things are looking up, though, because if you're in the state of Kansas, you can gamble on sports. And the wait is over. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is officially live in Kansas just in time for football season. That means betting legally on same-game parlays, spreads, money lines, and more anytime and anywhere across the Sunflower State. To celebrate, DraftKings is giving new Kansas customers a can't-miss offer. Bet just $5. That's all it takes. $5 on anything, and you get $200 in free bets instantly. Bet just $5, you get $200 instantly. Thursday night is almost here, depending on when you're listening to this. Want more action for opening kickoff? Everyone can win and experience the thrill of DraftKings early win promotion. Get up 7, you win. Bet on any pro football team of your choice, and if your team leads by 7 points at any point during the game, you get paid instantly, even if your team loses. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code KCSN to get $200 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on anything. Code KCSN only at DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Gambling problem, getting help is your best bet. Call 800-522-4700, 21 and older. Physically present in Kansas. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus issued as free bets. 1 early win token issued at opt-in. Moneyline bets only. Deposit and wagering restrictions apply. Eligibility and terms at DraftKings.com/Kansas on behalf of Boot Hill Resort and Casino. Well, now we've got to look into the depths of the Missouri Tigers here. We know the storylines about the game, the narratives about the game, and Drinkwitz and recruiting and all of that. Old rivalry renewed. But when it comes to what's actually out there on the field, this is where we turn to, in particular, Cole Manbeck for his area of expertise. He was breaking down to me the difference in schemes between Mizzou's old defensive coordinator and their new defensive coordinator before we started the pod here. So, look, Mizzou looked pretty impressive. They beat Louisiana Tech 52-24 in the season opener, but still seem to have some issues. This is my perception, Cole, of Mizzou. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Still have some issues at quarterback. They've got an incredible talent in Luther Burden, who was a 5-star wide receiver who came in and looked flashy, certainly when he had the ball in his hands. And they seem to have upgraded a little bit defensively. I guess tough to tell against Louisiana Tech, but Mizzou's run defense in particular was really bad last year. And it seemed like that's what Tiger fans were most encouraged by in week 1 is what the defense looked like.
Yeah, I mean, look, we can talk about the defense. They're on their 3rd defensive coordinator in 3 years. Steve Wilkes, who was the former head coach of the Arizona Cardinals for 1 season, I think in 2017 or 2018. He moved on after last season. Missouri actually wasn't going to fire him. They retained him, but he found a spot with the Carolina Panthers in January as a secondary coach. So he moved on out of the college landscape onto a defense that really struggled at Mizzou, to put it lightly. And now they brought in a new defensive coordinator in Blake Baker, who was promoted from safeties coach to the defensive coordinator. Baker came from Miami, actually coached under Manny Diaz as the defensive coordinator from 2019, 2020, and they had some pretty good defenses. Now, a large part of that could be credited to Diaz, who has a very good defensive reputation as well. But Baker's obviously learned from one of the better defensive minds in Diaz and worked under him. So it's game 1. I think that there's just been so many overreactions to college football after week 1, which is commonly what happens. You know, K-State fans are overreacting to Adrian Martinez in the passing game. KU fans actually think they might be good at football after beating Tennessee Tech, one of the worst FCS teams in America. And, you know, Missouri fans, you know, were excited about beating Louisiana Tech 52-24. Louisiana Tech is in Conference USA, and they're the preseason number 9 team in the league out of 11 teams in the poll that came out. So let's preface all of it with that. They played well against the run. They allowed 11 yards rushing on 22 carries. That's obviously tremendous, but it's Louisiana Tech. So let me give you the numbers from last season just so you can get an understanding of how bad Missouri's defense was. The fewest points they allowed in a game was 23 against Central Michigan last year. They allowed 3.05 points per drive, which was 117th out of 130 teams in the FBS, only better out of the Power 5 schools of TCU, Vanderbilt, Duke, and KU. They allowed 5.3 yards per rush, which ranked around 115th in the country, allowed 222 rushing yards per game, which ranked 120th out of 130 FBS teams. And, you know, if I go through, they allowed 250 yards or more on the ground in 6 of their 13 games last year. Get this, guys. Southeast Missouri State, I'm sure Missouri fans remember this. Southeast Missouri State in game 2 last year ran for 294 yards against Mizzou on 36 carries. They averaged 8.2 yards per rush. The Tennessee game, where Mizzou lost 62-24 last year in Columbia, they allowed 458 yards on the ground. So the run defense was brutal. There's no getting around that. Now, what I will say, they fired their defensive line coach, Jethro Franklin, I think 5 games into the season last year. And down the stretch, the defense did get much better against the run. The final 4 games, they allowed 524 yards rushing on 161 carries, which averaged out to a little less than 3.3 yards per rush and 131 yards per game. So they were drastically better. Now, part of that's the schedule getting a little lighter, but also Mizzou got better on that side of the ball. And then the pass defense last year, 8.3 yards per pass, ranking 104th in the country, 14 yards per completion, ranking 114th, 103rd in pass efficiency defense. So there just really weren't any highlights on the defensive side of the football for Missouri. They struggled all around. What I will say, and this is the strength of their football team, they're 28th in the country in sack percentage last year, sacking the quarterback 8.2% of the time. And I think one of the biggest keys to this game is going to be K-State's offensive tackles against Missouri's defensive ends. Missouri has 3 defensive ends that could potentially play in the NFL, and they're all big dudes. I mean, they're 6'4", 6'5", 275 pounds. Jeff Coate, DJ Coleman, and then Isaiah McGuire. I mean, they're all studs. DJ Coleman's an FCS All-American that transferred in from Jacksonville State. Matt Miller, ESPN Draft Insider, had mentioned in a tweet just recently that D-line is a problem. They got 3 potential NFL players at the DN position. So they get after the quarterback. And if you look at K-State's offensive line over the years, K-State hasn't been great in terms of pass protection. Last season, they ranked 72nd in sack percentage allowed at 6.8%. In 2019, K-State gave up an 8.2% sack percentage, which ranked 104th in the country. And in the outlier year, 2020, the COVID season, K-State was 5% sack rate, ranking 35th nationally. So that's going to be one of the biggest things to me, is watching how K-State stacks up offensive line and if they can win the battle against those guys up front for Missouri, because Missouri's defensive line is drastically better. They brought in a lot of transfers across the defensive side of the football.
Pretty comprehensive breakdown. And I think on the opposite side, isn't the same true key matchup there is going to be K-State's defensive ends against Mizzou's offensive line, trying to get to and put pressure on a quarterback who I don't know Mizzou fans have a ton of faith in right now.
Yeah, so I really think the 2 of the biggest keys to this game is K-State's offensive tackles and offensive line against their D-line D-ends. And then on the other side of the football, K-State's defensive ends, Felix, Matlack, Pickle, Brennan Mott, going up against, and Eli Huggins, at the nose tackle position, going up against Missouri's offensive line. Look, Missouri's got a really good left tackle. Javon Foster is all SEC first team heading into this season by Pro Football Focus. He had the highest run blocking grade among returning offensive tackles in the SEC heading into this season. He's a really good player. But where they struggle is where I think from some of the concerns, and I heard the Missouri guys on the KCSN platform on their show on this network mention it. They're concerned about the right tackle position, which is actually often where Felix lines up against. K-State often has him lining up against that right tackle. Myron White was honorable mention SEC last season at the right tackle position. They were counting on him to be the starter this year. He suffered an injury in the offseason. He's going to be unavailable in this game. And so they're going with Zeke Powell, who's a 6'5", 290-pound senior, actually transferred in from Coffeyville Community College a couple of years ago. He started 7 games at left tackle in 2020, but only started 3 games last year. It sounds like Missouri is concerned about that matchup against Felix with Powell. He's a little bit undersized. His strength is more in the run game. And when you watch the Louisiana Tech game, Missouri's offensive line really did not play well in that game, and which is strange to say because they ran for over 320 yards and averaged over 6 yards per carry. But a lot of that was their running backs making plays. So that's a weak point for Missouri. And you mentioned Brady Cook, John. I really think he's mobile. So he has some ability to his game. He's a sophomore, but he's not the highly touted kid out of recruiting. He was the 45th ranked quarterback in the country in 2020 recruiting class. He started 1 game last year. That was in their bowl game against Army, where he actually played pretty well. But he doesn't have the strongest arm. And I think there's going to be an opportunity for K-State to pick him off a couple times in this game when they drop him back or force a couple of turnovers. So that's certainly something to watch out for. You mentioned Luther Burden. He was the number 3 ranked player in the country. He's a true freshman. He was the number 1 receiver recruit in the entire country, according to On3 consensus. So he's a huge weapon. And they've got decent running backs. Actually Nathaniel Pete from Stanford transferred, and K-State faced him last year in the season opener. He had 3 yards on 3 carries against K-State. He was banged up some last season. But if you look at his career, he's only got 700 yards rushing, and this is going into his 4th season, but he averages over 8 yards per carry. He's RB1 for them. And then Cody Schrader transferred in from the from Division II. He led Division II football with over 2,000 rushing yards last season. So those are kind of their 2 backs. I think they're going to try to run it at K-State, and they're going to try to get Luther Burden the ball in space, whether it be quick passes or lining him up in the Wildcat like they did some against Louisiana Tech.
Pete's a Colombian native. He went to Rockbridge High School, I think, before he signed with Stanford at a high school. And to your point on Brady Cook, I would say that ball really flutters. That's the one thing I really see with him with his arm strength. That ball really flutters when he tries to push it downfield.
Yeah, I mean, Mizzou, I'm sure just wants to get it to Sam Horn eventually. He was like an Avery Johnson caliber recruit that they have waiting in the wings, but just as a true freshman, obviously not ready yet. So, all right. You guys ready for some quick hitters? I didn't come up with a better name for this in a week, and DY just rolled with the same name with the 3 weekly conversation. So I guess we're just going quick hitters here. I'll start you with this. What number is higher on Saturday? Deuce Vaughn rushing yards or Adrian Martinez passing yards? And I asked that because in week 1, it was not even close in favor of Deuce, who had 125 to the 53 for 9 a.m.
I am going to say Adrian pass. I think they get some explosives in the passing game for some reason, because I do think Missouri is going to make Kansas State beat them through the air.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Adrian as well. And part of that, I mean, look, we talked about Missouri shoring up their D-line. One of the big guys they really brought in was Tyron Hopper, who's a transfer from Florida, had 10 tackles for loss last season, was the 7th ranked linebacker in the portal. He was a big get for Missouri, chose them over Auburn. And he seems to have helped really shore up the run defense. He had 2 TFLs in the season opener. He's a really good player. So I'm going to take Adrian. I think Missouri is really going to key in on Deuce. I still think Deuce gets over 100, but I think Adrian's going to throw for closer to 200.
Yeah, the reason I would go with Adrian is because it will take that for K-State to win the game. Like, I think it will take him having more passing yards than Deuce Vaughn rushing yards, even if Mizzou's run defense still leaves something to be desired. How about this then? More yards from scrimmage in the game Saturday, Luther Burden or Malik Knowles?
I will say Malik Knowles, and that's more because if they're going to throw for close to 200, I would have to think that Knowles is going to factor into that quite a bit because he's the wide receiver with the proven explosiveness. And I do like Kansas State's corners, and Luther Burden's good, but maybe they can mitigate some of what he can do.
I just think Missouri is going to make it such a point of emphasis to get Burden the football, and they showed that they're willing to line him up in the Wildcat. He had 3 rushing attempts last week for 26 yards. That I think Burden will probably be the guy that gets more yards. Malik is probably going to be going up against Chris Abrams-Drain, who Pro Football Focus currently ranks as the 5th best cornerback heading into the 2023 draft. And actually, Pro Football Focus's Mike Renner has him going 20th overall in the first round in his early 2023 mock draft. So they do have a good corner there, and I just think Mizzou is going to have to rely more on Burden to win this game than K-State is on Knowles.
Yeah, I would go Burden. I mean, I know it was only 6 touches for 43 yards in the opener, but I think he's going to be a huge part of the game plan. And yeah, I mean, you guys kind of know my thoughts on K-State's receivers and the passing game. I need to see a little bit more before I trust it. I do agree that the passing game is going to have to be better than what it was, but until I actually see that happen and it really blow up and become wide open, I'm definitely going to go Luther Burden there. But I think K-State can certainly still win if that is the case. True or false, Spencer Sanders repeats as first-team All-Big 12 quarterback after he goes 28 for 41 for 406 yards and 6 total touchdowns on Saturday. And he was the only quarterback in Big 12 history to have, it was 3 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns in the first half, other than Patrick Mahomes. So it was a pretty special performance from Spencer Sanders last week, who has his fair share of doubters.
I'm going to say false. Shout out to him. After I give him a lot of shade throughout the offseason, but I'm not going to back down from it at this point. Good performance. Tell you what, the guy to maybe watch out for is Blake Shapen.
I was going to say that, DY. You had to slip that in. Yeah, Blake Shapen had a heck of a game, especially throwing the ball downfield. Didn't know Albany had a football team, but impressive victory from Baylor.
He'll get BYU this week, so good for him.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's a strange line.
Very strange line.
I'm really looking forward to watching that game. That's the John Kurtz Cole hotel room special from back in the day. We'd watch 9:30 BYU games on road trips. So looking forward to watching that one. I still think I'd take the field in this. Dylan Gabriel, Blake Shapen, etc. So yeah.
Quinn Ewers. Dylan Gabriel maybe. Blake Shapen maybe. I will take the field, but I will admit, seeing that on Saturday, I was like, well, I mean, Spencer Sanders finished the year pretty hot. He played really well in that Fiesta Bowl. Now he's got this game to back it up. Maybe it is the time now where he's going to put it together consistently. But I think there is enough competition. I would lean slightly toward the field. Look, even as the guy that's been the Oklahoma's taking a step down thing, watching a little bit of that Oklahoma game, I thought Dylan Gabriel looked really good. So that could wind up being the dude. What's more embarrassing? Scoring 7 points in a game without a touchdown, or driving 99 yards in a minute 5 seconds for the game-tying score, only to have the extra point blocked and lose. More embarrassing week 1 performance.
I will say, but I will also say, how about Iowa State for now being the underdog to that Iowa team?
Well, I mean, we know how history goes. Like Iowa State always loses that game to Iowa, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I think it's close. Like, I think the flat out embarrassment factor, it does tilt towards Iowa there, but I don't know. LSU, in terms of just being a mess, LSU feels like more of a mess. Like Iowa, we've kind of come to expect that. LSU feels sloppy and messy.
LSU was just special teams, but he had 2 muffed punts and a missed extra point that really, swung things the way that it happened.
Yeah, but I mean, like their offense sucked throughout most of the game too. I don't know.
They still have a chance to win. Yeah, I think it's Iowa.
Did I see that LSU receivers scrubbed LSU from their Instagram bios?
Booty. What's his first name?
Keyshawn Booty. Yeah.
Keyshawn Booty. Yeah. He did.
Did you see what Brian Kelly said about the guy that muffed the punt? He's like, it was our mistake to think that he could play.
Well, that's going to work out.
Brian
Kelly seems like a very that is not an individual I would like to have a beer with.
His press conference too, right?
Yeah.
When that lady said, well, if you win, I'll be on time.
Yeah.
Well, he's quite lovely. Great human being there. I think I would probably just say Iowa, having to rely on 2 safeties to win a game and beat South Dakota State, albeit a very good South Dakota State team. And shout out to South Dakota. The Coyotes beat South Dakota State last year. So, hey, it's a quality FCS win that Kansas State snagged on Saturday.
All right. This might be my favorite question that I've ever had in my storied career of doing this for 2 weeks now on 3-Mile. You're forced to ride in a car for 12 hours with either Eli Dorkwitz or PJ Fleck. Who are you taking? You got to be in a car for 12 hours on a road trip with either Eli Dorkwitz or PJ Fleck.
I will say Drinkwitz just because, like, I think he'll at least make me laugh. Like, I think they both are kind of the same thing. But PJ Fleck doesn't make you laugh. He's very stoic at the end of the day.
I would just jump out of the car. So on the interstate going 75 miles per hour and take my chances.
Well, my answer would be Drinkwitz because Wolf of Wall Street is one of my 2 favorite movies of all time. And I would really like to know what it was like working with Martin Scorsese and, just what it was like working with Leo and the whole cast and all that. There are a lot of great scenes I would like to know about there. So I think I would choose him just to learn more.
I didn't truthfully answer your question. I mean, I feel that way, but I would take Drinkowitz as well. DY, I think you're right. I think I'd probably laugh more with him. And I just feel like PJ Fleck might be even more of a fraud.
And he's serious. Like
like everything. Yeah. I think PJ Fleck would make me more uncomfortable. So I don't want to be around him. He would like lock me in the car until I committed to Minnesota. He wouldn't let me go.
That's
the
exactly
child security lock would be put on. You're gonna commit here. The scholarship is pulled. I'm PJ Fleck.
Send the tweet now. Get that notes app open. It's exactly what it would be. Okay, the last time Mizzou won a league title was 1969. It's the same year that we landed on the moon. Nice. Did that actually happen, or was it all just made in a Hollywood basement? Did we actually land on the moon in 1969, the same year that Mizzou won their last conference championship?
Which one's more likely? Yeah.
Is the question, did we actually land on the moon?
Yes, the question is, did we actually land on the moon?
I think we landed on the moon, but I doubt Missouri won the conference title.
I couldn't tell if John's giving me a history lesson here, like asking if it was like 1971 that we landed on the moon, or was it 69?
No, it was 69. It happened in 69. Also, last year Mizzou won a conference championship. The question is, do you believe in the moon landing? Or are you into the big moon landing?
I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, I'm not a conspiracy theorist on that. So yeah, I believe in that.
Okay.
I don't know if I believe that Missouri won a conference title, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
A little more skeptical of that.
I'm going to have to go to Wikipedia and check this out.
I'm going to see if I can find the film of that.
I don't know if you're going to find any film of that. I don't know. What do you even watch that on at this point? 1969. Okay. Lead pipe lock of the week time. Colorado, man. I think they're worse than Kansas. Brutal for me. I was put money on Colorado in week 1, theoretical money. 0-1, DY and Cole win with, some greasy covers, but they got it. It's a great slate of Big 12 games this week. And I almost, Cole, you mentioned that BYU line. I wanted to take it because BYU -2.5 seems like very fishy. I know the game's in Provo. I know it's late. I know Baylor's breaking in a lot of new faces here after only having played Albany, but it seems like one of those weird Vegas lines to lean into. So that's my honorable mention pick. But how about not even leaving the K-State Mizzou game? The over-under I'm seeing right now at 57, like I would take the under and feel pretty good about that. I don't think either quarterback here is ready to launch and explode. The defense has really ruled the day in week 1 for each team. Really good pass rush on both sides. It feels to me like this is going to be a pretty low-scoring game. So I'm actually going to use my lead pipe lock of the week on the under in the K-State Mizzou game.
I actually got it at a better line, but I'll stick with it. Like I got Tennessee at -4.5 when it opened over Pitt, but I'll stick with them at -6.5. I think they beat the crap out of Pitt.
That's a good one.
Speaking, Pitt's ranked and Tennessee's unranked, right? And they're going to Pitt, and Pitt beat Tennessee last year, but yet I agree with you. I would take that as well. But I got to be honest, I'm surprised John isn't jumping on that Iowa line, because what does Matt Campbell do? What's one guarantee in life? He's going to lose to Iowa, and he's going to find a way to not cover the spread. It's 3.5 right now. The Hawkeyes are favored. They couldn't have looked worse in the season opener. Spencer Petras had a 1.1 quarterback rating. We've already talked about that on the last pod. They had to rely on 2 safeties to beat South Dakota State. So what does that mean? Iowa State probably feels like they got a little bit of confidence going into this game, and that means Iowa State's going to lose by 2+ touchdowns. Book it. Iowa is the lead pipe lock of the week, and I will move on to 2-0.
I'll admit, I just got spooked, Cole. I got a little bit too spooked. I thought about it. I considered it. It would be very on brand for me, but I got too spooked by what Iowa looked like.
An honorable mention, and this doesn't count for me. I just saw Texas A&M. I know it seems big that they are 18.5 on App State, but the way App State lost to North Carolina, And having to play those two teams back to back, and I think A&M will be much better than last week. I bet that one goes A&M's way.
I saw that line too, DY. I saw it at 18.5 and thought that that was certainly one that could cover. They coming off such a letdown loss against App State after Mac Brown really took it to him. My guy.
Nobody thought about sprinkling a little on Alabama minus 20 in Austin.
Well, it's just raced up already. It started at 16.5.
Yeah, I would have taken it at 16.5, but now it kind of feels like you're getting a bad number based off that. There's not as much value.
Yeah, that's fair. Kansas, anyone consider Kansas plus 13.5 at West Virginia?
No, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, that's an interesting because West Virginia's there's a letdown effect there coming off such a devastating
last year.
Yeah, and such a devastating loss for the Mountaineers, 13.5. I mean, look, I don't think KU's going to win, but I could see them be competitive.
Neil Brown job on the line. Like he loses that game, he's pretty much done, right?
Yeah, I forget who they're playing, and I don't know if it's still there, but I actually got Oklahoma State at 11.5.
Arizona State.
I remember thinking they were going to win by at least 2 touchdowns.
So. It's a great slate of Big 12 games this week. We're going to find a lot about this league. I think 8 of the 10 teams play Power 5 or soon to be Power 5 opponents if you count Houston in that slate playing at Texas Tech. I'm looking forward to watching that game too.
Yeah,
Texas Tech now back to Donovan Smith all over again.
Who's the better player anyways. So, he came in and went 14-16 last week for over 200 yards.
Did sound like decent injury news for both Tyler Shuck and Chandler Morris at Tech and TCU, like guys that could return this year.
TCU, the Chandler Morris one does bite a little bit because I do think he's a lot better fit for that system than Max Duggan.
Yeah, I would agree. But I can't. I get it mixed up. I saw maybe like 3-4 weeks. I thought for Chandler Morris.
Oh,
I'll have to check on Twitter again. But I saw an update that at least indicated it was not season ending for Morris. Okay, prediction time. What do you think? K-State, Mizzou. I'm going to let somebody else lead it off here. Cole, you want to start with this one? What's your prediction?
I'm going to go with K-State 31, Missouri 20. I think K-State, a couple of the difference makers are going to be K-State's ability to turn Missouri over. I just like the advantages that K-State has up front, especially on the defensive line. I think Brady Cook is going to struggle some against this defense. Now, look, Missouri can run the ball some, but K-State's been solid against the run. I just really think K-State's defense is going to be big in this game. I think Adrian Martinez is going to be better. So I think K-State's going to cover the number. One thing I did forget to mention, guys, because special teams is such a big factor in these types of games, and I think most people assume K-State will get some sort of special team score. Missouri has one of the best kickers in the country, Harrison Mevis, who's 5'11", 254 pounds. He's a tank. He's 40 of 45 on field goals in his career and 6 of 7 from 50-plus yards. And I also bring him up because if you look at the kick returns last year, Missouri only had 5 balls brought out of the end zone for returns. They had 63 touchbacks on 68 kickoffs. So he's got a big leg. They're probably going to take K-State's kick return game out of this game. The punt return wise, they struggled in week 1 on just the one punt. They gave up a 43-yard return. But historically, Missouri's been decent on special teams. I just wanted to throw that in.
They call him the thicker kicker, by the way. So it's a nice play on words. All set. And because Kansas State's kicking issue still probably needs resolved to an extent, and maybe that's putting it nicely. I gave Kansas State a round touchdown number. I have them winning 28-17. I don't think Kansas State's going to worry about Brady Cook too much. I think they'll put a lot of emphasis on Luther Burden. I think they can mitigate what Missouri can do from an offensive standpoint. And then I think Kansas State just does enough on the offense, maybe find the explosives. I mean, they had explosive plays. That's really what helped them last year. It's what helped them last week. So, yeah, I'll take Kansas State 28-17.
Yeah, I'm going 27-20, which would mean that all three of us comfortably support my lead pipe lock of the week. So, I'm just saying there. Everybody is on record as being with me on that. Yeah, I think K-State will win. I think it'll be pretty competitive. I think it could even play out like I was revisiting the 2011 game the last time they played. K-State jumped out to a multi-score lead and had to kind of hang on to win by 7 late in the game. I could see something like that playing out as well. But I'll take K-State to get it done in a tough, competitive, pretty hard-nosed game against the Missouri Tigers there. So with that, enjoy the game on Saturday. Hope most of you listening to this are there. I think a lot of people will be. It should be a packed house and a great environment. I'll be at a wedding. So, this is what I found out. So the wedding is in Indiana.
I heard, by the way, we could set an attendance record this Saturday.
Oh, wow. Okay. I will be in Indianapolis, which I didn't realize was in the Eastern time zone, which was bad news for me because I realized, okay, well, so the game's not kicking until noon. And then we got to do like pictures or something at, I think, like 1:30. So I'm going to be like on a phone. I don't know. Just pray for my cell service. Okay, please. If I could ask everybody to send their thoughts and prayers to my cell service on Saturday, that would be great.
Well, I just have a rule that I'm not friends with people that have fall weddings. So if you have a fall wedding, don't expect me to attend.
Well, it's not John's. He's not getting married, so you guys can still be friends.
Well, yeah, John, just fair warning to you and DY whenever you do have your weddings, assuming I get an invite. I hope I do. Oh, wait, DY said he doesn't want a big crowd. So that actually kind of bummed me out. I miss having my friends get married because it's fun. But no fall weddings from either one of you two.
Well, Cole, good news. I'm trending nowhere near the direction of marriage anytime soon, so I don't think you're going to have to worry about it. You'll be okay. Thanks for listening to 3 Ma. Appreciate Tucker Franklin behind the scenes. Appreciate everybody with Charlie Hustle with Holiday Distillery, DraftKings for supporting the pod. We will talk to you soon. Enjoy K-State, Missouri, and we'll be back to recap it afterwards.